The people studying longevity and lifespan and how to increase the length of your life got it wrong. For the last almost 90 years, they've been telling people calorie restriction, calorie restriction, calorie restriction, to the point where there is actually a society for calorie restriction to help people understand it and go on it. But the science is actually wrong, and it dates back to that 1935 study. And the studies have repeatedly shown in mice, in rats, in chimpanzees, in smaller animals, right through to worms and something called Drosophila fruit fly. All of these studies have kind of shown that, or at least they thought, until someone recently went back and said, hold on, we've actually given the food to those animals in a short period of time. So it's not the calorie restriction diet that's helping these animals live longer. It's the time restricted eating, TRE, which is what I'm trying to explain to you. So it's fasting over a period of time, but there's a lot more to it. So stay tuned, because there is a precise way to do it to actually get the real benefit. I'll show you that in a moment. And so what we've got is that the mice had an extended life, but when they were fed, here's all your food. What do? What would you do? You'd probably go gobble, gobble, gobble. You'd eat it all up in 2 hours, and 22 hours they fasted. And they kept repeating that experiment and repeating the same experiment and repeating it until obviously everyone was convinced it was calories. Well, it's not. And then they started doing some experiments, and they gave them calorie restriction over a long period of time, 24 hours of the day. And they actually found it didn't contribute to any weight loss. What? Hold on a minute, it didn't contribute to weight loss, so what's going on? Because they didn't have that fasting period, which all animals need. And so they didn't get it. So then they found out that time-restricted eating increases your lifespan even without calorie restriction. So in the last 5 years, 10 originally, but in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of research which has turned this on its head. It's just that you haven't heard about it, and the other people haven't heard about it, and the scientists haven't even heard about it yet in some cases. So time-restricted eating increases your lifespan without calories. The experiment that cleared all this up definitively was where they looked at calorie restriction over a 24-hour period. So they cut the calories down significantly, and everyone think, well, you'd lose a lot of weight, you'd live longer and so on. Well, 24-hour period, it led to an increase in lifespan of only 11%. Only 11%, not the 30, 40, 50, or even more percent shown up in the other studies, because they got to eat over a 24-hour period. Wow, we're not supposed to be eating out of sync. And so what we find here in the next part of that experiment, they had calorie restriction on a 12-12, 12 hours of eating, 12 hours of not eating. But in this case, they fed the mice during the daytime. Bear with me here, this is getting a little complex, but mice are nocturnal, they're nighttime eaters. They should be eating at nighttime. We're daytime eaters, by the way. So eating during the day was putting their circadian rhythm out of sync, but they had time-restricted eating, and as a result of that, they had an increase of 19% in their lifespan. 19% increase, pretty good, much better than the 11% there, an 8% increase. Well, that's pretty good, and they're eating out of sync. But here it goes. Here is the clincher. When time-restricted eating 12-12, and I talk about 16-8, okay, they had nighttime eating when they're supposed to eat, because mice are nocturnal. Then literally they had a 34% increase in lifespan. 34%, pretty big jump from these two. And all it was, the timing of the eating. So it brings us to the critical part, absolute critical part here about how important timing is. Now, I want to kind of sum this up in a way, because I've been talking about the benefits in longevity, but we already know, and I know you've seen my other videos on fasting and the benefits of TRE, time restricted eating fasting, okay? And you've watched those and you know the benefits. But I just want to recap what we know. The time restricted eating decreases the risk of all of these age-related conditions: Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cardiovascular disease, heart attack, strokes, hypertension, all those diabetes and cancers. And everyone's going, well, how are we going to fix this epidemic, this crisis of chronic illness that we're facing? How we need more money from pharmaceuticals and hospitals? No, we need time restricted eating. It's a simple equation. Now, I've already shown that in the other videos, but that's one of the reasons why, of course, we live longer as a result of time-restricted eating. And so what this does is it resets, as well as all the other benefits, turning on the sirtuins and anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, it turns on and it coordinates your circadian rhythm. And your circadian rhythm, as you already know, is your internal clock. And all your organs and many of your cells rely on that clock to coordinate and function, do everything properly. So if it's all functioning properly, one thing that sets it off is daylight, which is great. So you go out in the sun and you get sun first thing in the morning. That is the best thing you can do for it. And the second thing is eating, and you eat in the morning. Doesn't have to be really bright and early, but it has to be in the morning. And so we go a reset of circadian rhythm, and as a result, it sets up a new timing for your whole body. Now, remember, the mice were nocturnal eaters. We are daytime eaters, so it has to be in the day. Pretty simple, isn't it? So we now go, timing is everything, timing is everything, timing is everything. And so what are the rules for TRE? And some people really complicate and go, oh, you've got to do this, you're really precise. No. You've got to be flexible. So first of all, 16 hours of not eating, 8 hours of eating. Now, if it's 12, that's great. That's a good start. Then some days it's 14, 10, and other days it's 24 or whatever it is. If you're going out on a Saturday night, hey, enjoy the Saturday night and get back in the routine the next day or the day after. And so you don't have to do this. It's not set in stone. And so there's a lot of research still coming out on this and how best to do it. But at the moment, be flexible. And I tend to keep to the 16-8, but as I said, I go out on a weekend. If I go out for a breakfast with some friends, I start eating earlier. And then, okay, if I'm going out for dinner on the same night, I'll eat a bit later too as well. I very rarely ever eat after about 8 or 9 o'clock anyway. So, but come here and be flexible. Be flexible so that it fits in with your diet and lifestyle and everything else you're doing. And then healthy foods. All of the studies on the mice and the rats and the chimpanzees, they were fed a well-balanced diet. Now, I'm a big advocate of a well-balanced, nutrient-dense, lots of good foods in there. So without any doubt, get rid of some of the junk food and increase some of the nutrients in them. But remember, timing is critical. So even eating junk food, it actually sets your gut better and it sets your circadian rhythm better. So even if you're just doing the timing of the TRE, it's a great start. But what they've found is resveratrol, which is the nutrient that get in your grape skins. So the red, the dark, the purple grapes have resveratrol. You're going to be in peanuts as well, by the way. Here's something you might like, and check out my video on peanuts. But resveratrol is also another one that helps set up the same process as fasting. It's called a mimic or mimetic. Excuse, it's pretty hard to pronounce. So mimetic, and it does exactly the same in terms of the chemistry, or lots of the same as fasting. So resveratrol and a fiber, because fiber keeps those calories down anyway. So lots and lots of fiber, and as you know, my favorite is K fiber. So then you've got daytime. Make sure it's daytime. It has to be daytime, and morning start. Now, morning start, as far as I'm concerned, begins between 10 and 11. I get up fairly early, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'll do my first 4 or 5 or 6 hours without eating. Then when I feel hungry, I actually start eating. So I follow my body routine, how I feel about it, and I start at 10 or 11 o'clock, usually 11 o'clock, but I don't start my break of the fast and at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 3 o'clock and go through to 9 o'clock. The critical thing is that last meal should be around about 6 or 7 o'clock at the latest. So you've got the morning start. And then finally, exercise also mimics fasting, same as resveratrol. And so if you want to get the real benefits of your intermittent fasting, you want to live longer using time-restricted eating, you want to add the resveratrol, the fiber, and you also want to add in some exercise. And the studies show at the moment, the best time to exercise is actually when you're in the fasting period. So I tend to exercise all day, at least be active all day. And when I can, exercise in that morning period still. So I wake up, I'm active doing something, then I'll go do some exercise, come back, and then I'll start my eating routine at 11 o'clock or something like that. So the message is exercise mimics fasting as well. So it has a synergistic effect, it adds on to it. So as a result of all of this, we now know that the calorie restriction diet for longevity, for living longer, for increasing your lifespan, isn't really effective. What is effective is the time-restricted eating and eating healthily and doing all these other things I've suggested. If you've got a lot out of this, share this video, subscribe to the channel below and share it with all your friends.